I'm just going to talk a few moments and then
Live Kung Fu Shaolin. The other stream has stopped working too, Joe.
Okay. Yeah, this one. So this one should be going live now. Oh,
go back to Zoom because we want to be on Zoom, not on YouTube.
Yeah. Can you talk now?
Yes.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, cool. Well, I say so. I think we've just gone live. We're not super conversant with the Zoom platform and streaming everything together. So I'm just going to talk for a little while and then introduce our guest today, Joe Gifford. Andrea and I are in Spain still, and we think we'll be here for a few more weeks. We're hoping to have our good friend Simon Courtney come out and join us for a few days. Simon's the flat earther who has provided us with some accommodation 2 years ago at Letton Hall, and recently he got us an old banger, an old car that we're using to travel with. It afforded us the opportunity to be on the tour in July around England, and we then took the opportunity of some free accommodation in France for a few weeks with an old work pal who still wears the face nappy, so that didn't go so well. And we thought we would bounce down to Spain, where we got a couple of friends. Howard George Stirrup is a fellow activist, and Alex Michael, music guy, conspiracy music guru, and Stellium 7, the guy who looks into the possibility that some of our rocks could be fallen giants. And on that note, I was gonna, just as part of my intro, and today's conversation is a first with Joe, and it's a foray into an area of development that we all need, but that typically in the flat earth or truther, should I say, the more left brain 9/11 types, Mandela effects, and melted this and giant that, we tend to be very what I call left brain. And then on the other side of that coin, you have, on the other side of us, you have the right brain element of us, which some people are super strong at, super spiritual, super connected to source or the self and so on, but they have not got the tools to jump over the left brain fence and see the left brain stuff. So I've found that, although I've come from a left brain side, Andrea tends to have come at this from a right brain perspective. So her research over the last few years has been focused more on right stuff, whereas mine has been on left, and we've both been sort of pulling towards each other in terms of sharing the left and the right to come into some kind of balance. But so this is I think a very important time where we are all at in our journeys, and for some it'll be the time to really unlock the inner love, the inner heart that is waiting to be released. So, but I just for a bit of fun, I thought I might play and I can't do it directly through this. So I thought I might try and do it from my phone. A video that I made looking at something completely different. Something, let's see. You could have done it. Yeah, I could have shared it on screen.
We'll get better at this.
Yeah, it's a work in progress, and what it shows is one of the vast possibilities of the world that we're in is that we do literally walk around amongst giants, fallen giants, that there was on this earth at one point, giants that walked around, and something caused a change, and those giants went to sleep. And so when we were here, as we were in Spain, we've been looking at Stellium's mammoth rock. There's a video on my channel from 2 weeks ago, I guess, that we filmed that from a distance. But we've been going to this beach locally that has this promontory, this outcrop near a place called Calpe, or on a place adjacent to a town called Calpe. And we've been staring at this rock. Well, I looked at it the other day and I, wow, man, that looks like a man's head lying down and in the water from this angle. And I took a few photos and I did a little bit of research, and I found a few telltale things. One I think in Wikipedia it says that it came to be because of an earthquake, a volcano in 1946 or something like that. And then in the local history on it, they say this rock has been here forever. It's always been a landmark, and so on and so forth. So it already has a bit of a mystery attached to it. And I said to Andrea, wow, I bet there's a cave in there, because a week ago we went through a cave about 10-20 miles inland of here. We went through a cave. I posted it on my channel. It got blocked in America and a bunch of other places because of the music track I used of Alex Michael singing a song. So it got blocked in some places. So not everyone can see it. But in this cave, we walking through this and going, wow, this could be these ridges and these flow lines and these pipes and caves and lines and so on could be organic. They could have once been a living thing that has now crystallized. And so I looked at this head in Calpe and discovered that, yes, it does have a 500-kilometer cave. It could be longer, but that's how long they can go in from what I believe is the top of the head somewhere here and walk all the way in. But what I'm going to show you is a side profile in this video of mine, along with me being a little bit funny, doing some karaoke with the Conspiracy Music Guru the other night. And just to have a look at this head and say, wow, that's, it's a head and this part of the neck. This is where the town of Calpe is, on this structure, by the way. This massive town is basically here. So see what you think about this. It's not full screen, but let's see how this goes. I'll just turn on. That's me doing karaoke. Now look at that head. Here it comes. Look at that head. Look at that, man. Look at that head. See Alex Michael enjoying my singing there. He's very critical though, so there's a lot to respect him. No, it's going to last forever. We're going to 3 minutes long. am really seeing this Yeah, here's a video of the mates.
There's a curvature in the water, so I can't see the beach on the other side. My angle of resolution is super low. I'm almost level.
I'm going to zoom in on the head in a moment. What I believe is a very much looks like a head and a neck.
It's uncannily like a man's head. His chin, neck.
Oops. That's the chin, you know, the neck obviously coming up to the chin, and then there's lips. And I was looking at it yesterday, and it seemed very much to me like the mouth is open there, just to the left of that lady's head. There's an open lips, and
so I just conferred with the family, and they're like, "Yeah, they can see it. They can see it."
the mouth is open slightly.
So then we're
Lips
like,
in
"Oh,
this
well,
case.
if that's the case, then is that like the arm over there?" But this is the mind blower. Check that out. There's another head, but the nose is facing the opposite direction, with a nose and a mouth down below. Okay. How about that?
All right, that'll do. That's, but you know, when you look at this picture here, you go, wow, there is a, you know, let me see if I can put my, I can't really, but there's chin, and then the lips are here, and then the nose would be back there, and they can go in at this side. There's a 500-meter cave that starts in, and when I've looked at the pictures of this cave and you look inside of it, it's like, wow, those could easily be tubes and pipes of some, you know, monstrously large former being that lay down to sleep here. Someone said to me, a friend said to me last night, there's a children's movie, I forget the name, Muhan or some Mue or something, where this island actually, after a period of time, stands up and is a woman that had gone to sleep. And anyway, I just thought I would offer that as a little kind of intro, not because it's relative necessarily to this conversation, but just to pass some time so that people could come into the chat. And if you've just joined, thank you.
Can I tie it in maybe, is that we don't know, but that what we're experiencing here is something extraordinary, that it's something beyond our imagination. And you know, we want to be so safe in the knowing that on the other side of knowing the not knowing, there's actually all this infinite possibility. And this is maybe where we should bring Jo in. Jo, if you could introduce yourself, and then we could take it from there.
Actually, I have a diagram to draw quickly to explain that concept. Excellent. Of what we know. Okay. So in this little bit here is what we know. We might know that we're American, or we're Australian, or we're a female. This is what we don't know. We don't know. I don't know how to be a surgeon. I don't know how to be an archaeologist. And this is what we don't know that we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
The bulk of reality, we don't know that we don't know it. And it's a good way to think and to keep your mind open. And I was going to look, are there any Horatios in the chat? As per the quote, there are more things in this world. So I would ask everybody that watches this to keep the open mind. And to when you keep your mind open, you are actually keeping your energy open. And with every English word spoken, with every concept conveyed, there's energy tied up in that. And what happens is the energy of those words, if you're open, gets incorporated into your energy system. It supplements it, it changes it, because it's become incorporated with the energy that you are emitting. And thus the world then begins to reflect that additional knowledge that's in your energy signature, and you begin then to experience it as wisdom. You get to experience it in your day-to-day life as it unfolds. So I would ask that everybody stay open. And the other thing is, what I love about flat earthers, about Tartarian hunters, is that they've already opened a door in what is acceptable or not. So I find they're open. They're already having this inquiring mind, which is what I absolutely love.
Do. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but they do. But you know, in my experience, you know, so many of my flat earther friends to spiritual or.
Okay, we have a lag. You guys are lagging. Or maybe it's me.
In the way that we like doing, and so they often will reject some of the, you know, the biggest name kind of flat earthers that I've met have struggled to grasp the right brain stuff that I call the right brain stuff. But before we get too far into that, because I love what you're saying, Joe, I think I did my little sing-along there and didn't really move into like an introduction of who you are. And before I do that, I just wanted to say quickly hello to some people in the chat, including Nathan, Squirrel Sniper, Brian Evans. Nice to hear from you again. And Hippie Shake, thanks for your promo the other day. I appreciate that. Hi, Natalie. And Sherilyn and Nathan, of course, National Memorial Gardens. Nice to see you, my friend.
Squirrel Sniper.
Yeah, Squirrel Sniper. We hope to see you again soon. And Nathan, we hope to meet you and Penny sometime soon as well. We plan to be back in England certainly for November for various reasons. And so, you know, we'll look to hook up with people then.
Sorry, Joe, can I just add something in? You know, I think you're right. When you've come to these lies or this incredible truth, then it does open you up. But because the way I see, because we're in this experience, there is an element of survival. We're in that sort of survival mechanism. There's protections that our ego or our brain, our mind, want to keep as a form of protection.
Agreed, because can I say this? Because you know, from a man point of view, you know, when or masculine or left brain point of view, perhaps, when we know that we are being misled or we're being lied to, we're being mistreated, we are being force-fed poisons, mind, body, and soul, then our instinctive reaction is to go and fight that thing, is to stand up against it. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so the mind has these mechanisms that obviously recognizes things that are familiar, and then it will adopt its protective mechanisms that are learned very young to stop us being open, because open feels unsafe.
Yes.
And so so I think that's where we sit of expansion and openness, by healing and understanding what the brain or the ego is doing to try and keep us safe. So in other words, that we have to be right, or that we have to figure this out. Those are sort of mechanisms to keep us safe rather than keep us open.
I think for me, it's less of a leap to where we need to go for a flat earther and a Tartarian than for somebody that has never opened that door.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
that is the deal. There's a crack. There's there's an open part to them that's looked outside the box, that's looked out of the rut of perception that most people live in their entire life. And this is where the importance of the inner child work comes in, because you're right, absolutely right. All of these perceptions are set up when we're little kids. And it's like we put on a pair of glasses in those very early years with 7-year-old filters in them. And people forget that they've put them on. They don't even know they're wearing them.
Blind.
So the inner child work is to actually identify these very early programs. And I find that understanding the big picture of this programming is like 80% of changing your life, because most people are totally unaware that they're really not choosing how to be in the world. Most people are knee-jerk reacting or conditioned to respond like Pavlov's dog to all of this external stimulus. And they're not choosing how to feel about the election. They're not choosing how to feel about Donald Trump. They're not choosing how to feel about, the Jabberwocky, whatever you want to call it, that we are conditioned to respond to these threats, these things, without thinking, without stopping. And so this is why it's important to do this inner journey, to understand that programming from when we were kids, to understand where our fears lie and where they come from. And the definition, I use the term a 7-year-old, but the other name or definition of the 7-year-old is your unfinished business from other lifetimes. So we've come in choosing parents so that we get set up energetically and emotionally to be triggered. And in the moment of triggering, our soul is wanting us to wake up and to look at that triggering from a different perspective, and thus the healing can begin.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're acting on a default. People don't, it's so blind, it's so much our identity that we don't even see it, and our reactions are default reactions rather than, and in my opinion, that's true freedom. Freedom is when we can choose from a place, a conscious place, a place of awareness, rather than that default. And it's multi-layered. And of course, I think at the moment, in this time, in this incredible time, everybody is going through this layering of unpicking. Some it might be only just starting to see the illusion that's out there, and others it might be that they're starting to unpick the layers within. That's certainly my personal experience. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. It's
I just want to interrupt this broadcast. Sorry, this is the third time I've done that, but a good friend of mine is in the chat, or he's listening in at the moment. His name is Dudu, and he's an African friend of ours, a guy who I was doing. We went to a waterfall on one day. I was doing flyering wherever I could. Whenever I stopped the car, I would get out and hand out flyers to people and try and make a connection and information about, particularly in this case, about individual sovereignty and the right of consent and so on. And on this one day, I approached this large group of African ladies who didn't seem very interested in me, but I went over to the group of men and started chatting to them. And for about 15 minutes, I had probably 5, maybe more, 6, 7, 8 men listening intently. And one of them was this guy Ndudu, and he and I made friends, and we hung out a little bit, and we did some stuff together, including me connecting him with a sort of a local political movement that is trying to break the system called OM. I want to break the system, provide an alternate way of arranging affairs. You know, dude is a hardworking guy. He drives one of those what's known as African taxis, or they call them black taxis there. And I just noticed that he was in the chat there as Samakeli Nduduzo, and he's happy for me to call him Dudu. That was, you know, yeah, there's actually some pictures of him on my. There's a little bit of video, because, you know, my relationship with him was during the time of the previous Trinity 4 channel. So the content that I had, including him, most of that got washed away by medical information. But you know, he's someone who we have a heart connection with, who you know, who also wants to see his community get opportunities. And if you had to drive through parts of the area that he lives in, it would bring tears to your eyes, because, you know, people in that part of the world have been left a situation has been created where they are making do with very, very, very little. So okay. Welcome, my friend. It's my brother. I know you're working. He said he's actually driving, so you can't, you know, he's working, so you can't actually join the chat all the time.
I just want to say that day that we went to the waterfall, and this is the beautiful experience that we're having, is that we were having a transition day, which is always kind of difficult for us. And I think we were feeling a little bit despondent, and we went to the waterfall because for us, when we're feeling despondent, nature calls, and it always is such a tonic or a healing experience when we go and take whatever's feels incongruent. We go into nature, and somehow that seems to help us find the way, or certainly get grounded and back on track. And we were kind of going through the transition and decided to go to the waterfall because it always felt so good to be there. And
the waterfall I played at as a child, by the way, 40 years ago.
Yeah. And this is where we came across Dudu, and the experience of connecting with Africans, because there's such a great divide in South Africa. Black-white divide. And Dave and I felt then, and still feel now, that we want to be that bridge. And so it was an important meeting, and beautifully brought to us.
Wow.
So that I just want to bring that into the story.
But it's interesting correlation between, you know, what you were saying about bridging between what I call the left and the right brain kind of thinking in South Africa and all over, you know, because I see it with the Muslim Christian business and you know, divisions. And but you know, in the South African context, black-white is a big thing, and many a black man has said to me, you know, if a white guy and a black man, you know, like us, can come together, we can really be a force for change in the world, you know. So I think it's same is true with the sort of left-brained and right-brained thinkers who have done, you know, this is why I like talking to people like yourself, Joe, because, and people won't know this yet, but Joe has a long story of diligently seeking and working towards truth. And perhaps if you wouldn't mind, Joe, just give us a few minutes of your background. She shared some of it with me before we went live, but I think that to hear where Joe comes from and the depth of your journey, I think it's very valuable, and people will appreciate knowing a little bit more about that. So before we move off from the waterfall, I wanted to ask, was that the day we got so sick? Was that the day
No.
it was another visit to the waterfall?
Yeah, I don't think we actually even went to the waterfall that day. Zizi wasn't up for it. We just
No,
kind of sat in the
yeah, we were in the
car park.
river. No, we went in the river.
Okay,
and,
I don't remember.
yeah, we got
that.
violently sick at one point after a visit to that same waterfall, and
Well, we had an experience to detox. Let's
it
put
was
it
a
that
hugely
way.
detoxing thing, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, Joe, so tell us a little bit about your story from your young days and where you are now.
Okay. All right. So I'm 60 and I first learned to meditate when I was 22. I didn't get on my spiritual journey seriously until I was 27. And when I was 27, I sort of came to the end of wanting to be on this realm, on this planet. Let's just use the term planet. I was having a fantastic time in my life, and one day I was reading the paper and there were rapes and murders in London, and there'd been an oil spill in the Antarctic and it had gone through the krill and through all the whales. And I just couldn't cope with the life I was leading and these certain truths about what was happening in the world. So I got off the tube because I was in London at the time, and I looked up at the sky and I said to God, I'm done. You can take me if you want. I don't have anything else. I don't know which direction to go. Nothing pulls me. Nothing interests me. And I eventually went and met this woman who gave me a book, and I started on this very intense spiritual inner journey to find out who I was and why was I alive. So I spent around 18 years in a Gnostic school, in a Western mystery school, I suppose you would call it. And it was actually a boot camp. So we learned lots of different things about the emotional body, about quantum mechanics, about the brain, the body, cell chemistry, biology, the whole thing.
This
a
was in
little bit
America.
of it. Yeah, this was in America.
Mm-hmm.
And I also looked into, at the same time I was looking into NLP, tapping, the Sedona method, a lot of different other modalities. So I ended up leaving and coming back to Australia in around 2007. But the interesting thing about that community, that spiritual school, is it wasn't just sitting around omming and, love and light. It was really into sort of going into truther territory, having read Bill Cooper's book when it first came out, Behold a Pale Horse. I understand what the WHO was up to in those times. There was also a TV show that was on the air in Britain. It was a science show, and it was ultimately called Alternative 3. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but they understood where the planet was going, and they had 3 alternatives. And one was depopulation, the second was underground tunnels, and the third was a base on Mars. And this was shown on British TV and then retracted the day after. So all of this stuff was there. We were preppers. We had food storage and gold and silver. And I even spent time around 4 days in an underground bunker just to have the experience of it. So let me tell you right now that you actually hibernate. You shut right down when you do that. And we spent, most of the time asleep. That's what happens when you remove yourself from that stuff. So I'm sort of this funny combination of truther and spiritual new agey type. I mean, it's not new age really, it's old age that is coming back into the fore. So
I'd like to pick into the new age thing a little later. Carry on, but I'd like to pick into defining that because it comes up for me quite a bit. People are like,
Yeah.
oh, that's new age, that's bullshit, or and of course this is like old age, that's good, but we can talk on that. So carry on.
So when I actually had not really gone, I was a hollow earther before I was ever looking at flat earth. I was into hollow earth, and about the books, the Smoky God and Etadorpa and all of those things. So I sort of was into unusual thoughts, out of the box thoughts. And then I came across Tartaria, and I came across Martin's Flat Earth British, and just sort of delved into that community. So I'm sort of straddling the two. And I think that each has something to offer the other, very, very importantly. And that to go where we're going, and from a spiritual perspective, we are not here by accident. We are actually in a process of evolution. We are in a process of healing old wounds. We are here in a process of opening to new frequencies that are actually coming towards the planet. So both part
I'm
of
just going to
this.
call you out every time you say planet. I have to apologize for that.
I know.
It's
I
a swear
know.
word. It's a swear word in this house, actually. But,
Well, I would tell you. Can I tell you what I think it is?
Yeah.
Because we're going to get into the multi-worlds, the many worlds theory. We're going to get into the fact that this is all an illusion as we go through. That reality, you have to look at reality on a couple of different levels. And on one level, nothing is real. It's all an illusion. On another level, it's all horrible and incredibly tough and challenging. But what I think is, we are on a planet, but Earth is a little flat plane on that, under a dome. That's just my opinion, and I have no proof for that.
Yeah.
So, and also too, that it just depends on what dimension you're in, whether it's round or flat, and whose reality is, because reality is very malleable according to who's observing it.
Well, I guess if you were the engineer of a football stadium that was one of those enclosed ones with the roof, and you look down on that, you would say it was a round, it was a round domed object. But if you were a player on the pitch, you would say, oh no, it's absolutely flat. My world is flat. And then what I try and suggest to people is that, you see, the hollow earth might be true if you take that the electromagnetic light bubble that surrounds our world is toroidal. It is orange shaped. An orange is almost like a perfect torus or an apple. It is that kind of shape. But as I say to people, in nature, the fruit is always inside of the skin, not outside of the skin. So the why it's important to me to make this point is because in God's creation, God never makes the fruit sit on the outside of the skin. The nut, the bark, all of these things are a skin that must protect the soft and the wet things inside. And this kind of comes back to one of the questions. This comes back to one of the questions I have for people on the sort of this more spiritual side of this, because I've encountered quite a lot of deep spiritual people, and then you bring our reality, maybe fractal, electromagnetic, it may be hologram or something like that, but our physical world, there are laws to that physical world, and those laws sort of demand that we have a pressure system inside of a container. They demand that when water comes to rest, it's always level. It's surface, unless you've got a tiny bubble and there's enough surface tension to cause it to kind of convex in this way. Water is always level. and every body of water is horizontal to that same level. And why I think this conversation matters is because if this life is a test, and those systems of state and those systems of establishment, the scientific charters and organizations and so on, were always designed with the intention of, whether it be God's intention or the devil's intention, they were always designed with the intention of misleading people, such as to diminish our sense of our true God essence. And so for me, I feel like it's one of those important bridges. This is what I see in the spiritual side, just equally like I see it in the truther side, is that they can see that stuff, but cannot grasp the importance of it. And I say to people, like, if we've been lied to, there's an important reason for that lie. It's not just there by happenstance. It's not just there, because the government got it wrong about, how much pandemic is and all this sort of, scientists must have just got it wrong. Well, no, they've been misled for a reason, and that is a reason of mind control. So I think that's why for me it's such a subject of such importance, because just like the spiritual stuff is so vital, so is the truth about the material world, in as much as, just like your pie graph suggested, chart suggested, there are perhaps unknowns that we will never know, and we need to be humble enough to be comfortable enough with a little bit like when you went into your bunker. You have to know that you're locked in, and there's no sense in fighting that. It's more like, let me just come into peace with that. However, if there are things that you could know, if I said, for example, hey, there's a little torch in the corner of the room there, it'll just make it a little bit more enjoyable, or a little bit more, you'll have some light and so on. If I told you that, you would be grateful. If I said at the end of it, hey, did you find the torch? And you go, I never knew there was a torch. Why didn't you tell me there was a torch? I could look for it. I would have enjoyed having some light. I could have read a book while I was in there, for example. And I think this is the darkness that our world is in, is a darkness of, there are lights that can be used to make the experience here more complete, and perhaps attend to some of the spiritual wounding that this darkness intended to wreak upon us.
Yeah. Let me get in. Let me give you a different perspective on what you're saying. Everything that you're saying exists in this level. When I think of reality, it exists on a couple of different levels. And this is my concept, and I'm just throwing this out there for people to like or not like, throw away, never listen to again, say that I'm crazy. I don't mind, but I just want to give this other perspective.
Yes.
You've seen Kirlian photography. I think that's what it's called. They'll have a leaf and you'll see energy.
Yeah. We
are all emitting a frequency and energy. And if you were to look at it like a wave, everybody's wave is different. It's like a thumbprint. And on that wave is our DNA, our parents' DNA, our early life circumstances, and our past life unfinished business. So we are emitting this frequency, and this goes into the law of attraction. Whether you want to believe that or not, I have seen it happen in my life, the law of attraction. That the energy that we are emitting determines what is drawn to us. And the reason that it's set up that way is we have wounds, we have concepts and perceptions that we can't see easily because it is so much a part of us. We live and breathe it so much, we can't see it. So what happens is the universe, God, your soul, source, whoever, will sometimes bring people to you, situations scenarios to show you, to show you through the mirror what's going on inside of you. So on one other level, everything is only happening to show you. Now, we get emotionally triggered by the war, say, for example, in Ukraine and Russia. We get triggered. That has come up into our reality in various degrees. Some people are in the middle of it. Some people are in Australia and hardly seeing it. But the degree to which it mirrors and matches your frequency is the degree to which it comes into your reality. So from my perspective, on this level here, not on the level you're talking about. And as a human, we exist fully in all of these as an experience of living in this plane. So when we are emotionally triggered by anything in the world, by a person in our lives, by a situation, and we have an emotional response, at the core of that emotion is energy. Emotion is energy in motion. So we are feeling an emotion, and at the core of that emotion is that energy that's on our frequency signature wave that we are emitting. So when we are emotionally triggered by something, it is an opportunity to get to that childhood wound, because we chose our parents in order to be set up energetically and emotionally to bring to us things that trigger us, to help us heal these wounds that we've been carrying around for lifetimes. So when we, I'm all for activism. I'm all for standing up for the oppressed. I'm all for taking action, totally. But the most effective way that you take action is to deal with your own emotions prior to actually taking action. Because on one level, it's showing you. So what are you feeling when you think about Russia and Ukraine? Are you feeling fear? Are you feeling grief? Are you feeling sadness? And the reason is that inside of you are your wounds that have fear, sadness, and grief. There are people experiencing the Russia-Ukraine thing in various degrees. So the people that are right in the middle of it are feeling very intense emotions because that is what needs to be healed. Like here in Australia, we had bushfires. So that was triggering many Australians. It's on the level I'm talking about is it's an illusion to show you. When you heal that, the reality that is out there changes and morphs to reflect a shift in you. So if you, for example, have a neighbor that is driving you crazy, it's never about the neighbor. It is never about the neighbor. It's you. They're showing you. If you deal with your emotions at the bottom of that issue, that neighbor will move away. That neighbor will win the lottery and buy a new house. Because it's a reflection of the energy you are emitting. So you can take action, yes, but first of all, deal with your own emotions around it. So this is the aspect of the levels of reality, in that the illusion is you're only seeing it. It's only in your reality because it's a match for your frequency, which has wounds in it, which has unfinished business in it. And as we heal those heavy, dense emotions, that's how we bring heaven on earth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The work I've been doing, we call it distinguishing. Where am I distinguishing from? And I'm distinguishing all my as you say, your vibration is distinguishing from that wound that you have. And so therefore what's coming into your reality, which is why they say you create your own reality, because you're distinguishing, or your vibration is pulling things in, experiences in, which is why I said that the recent 2-year experience that everybody had, you know, we can go, oh, look what they're doing. And yes, that's an important aspect of it. But equally, what did everybody in some way was triggered over the last 2 years, and wounds came up. Everybody in some way, shape or form, these last 2 years and what happened brought up something.
Yes,
And
actually,
it was very purposeful. It was very purposeful.
well, actually, you know what's interesting? Can I just what I wanted to say about that? Because when you were talking, it made me think about my experience of talking to people in South Africa, predominantly, but also in other places. But if I spoke to people who were associated with the medical fraternity, and I told them the same thing, as opposed to someone who was more removed from it, or who'd had a negative experience from needlecraft, then they have a very different reaction to it. And I was interested in that. What you were saying about that is that we have, and this is what truthers like me need to kind of grasp or understand better, is that we have something at the deeper soul level that we are here to confront, and that the experience through our parents and through our community is almost tailored to give you the yin yang, the dark and light, and the Satan, the opponent, and which is a bitter pill for us to swallow in a way, because I think one of the truther kind of issues is that we've been lied to. One of our biggest kind of triggers is that's the wound, is that we've been lied to. And unfortunately, it means our parents lied to us. And aside from the Father Claus lie, Father Christmas, Santa Claus, one of the two. We've had that lie, and then we realized that our governments, and of course, a lot of the guys that I meet in Flat Earth are very smart, actually. And so they were, like me, pretty conversant on all things, super cosmic and light years away and all of that sort of stuff, and exoplanets and quasars and so on. And so we for us, it's a big slap in the face. You've been lying to those that you around you by passing on information that was initially a lie that was given to you by your parents, or in this case, your government, your educators, another form of your parents. And I think we're in that kind of camp of people who go, freaking heck, your mother and father have been lying to you. You need to wake up and realize that you've been misled. Others on the other extreme of that go, hey, we don't need to worry about what they're doing out there. They're lying to us. We'll just sit here and be with source and we'll just chant and bring in, love, light, or happiness whilst the war rages on out in Ukraine. So and I think we have to balance those two things, because, but from my perspective anyway, that we have to balance the knowledge that we share along with about what's in the world, but you're right, I totally get that we need to come at it from that healed place, because I see it in myself and I see it in other activists that we sometimes spew a lot of our own unresolved anger onto the punter to defend the lie. As they're defending what they think is truth. For us, they're holding on to that lie. They're covering for mummy and daddy. Well, although someone is in the chat who's I think he's dealt with a lot of that, is Dean HD. So hello, Dean. He's very good in the street.
But the Professor Daves or whatever that are coming into your sphere are triggering those wounds once again. They're triggering those things that need to be alchemized. I think what we need to remember, the balance comes where we're having this experience. We always need to remember that we're in this human experience, and there's something in the work that I've been doing is that we're everything and nothing, and that's a concept. But it's a very difficult one for us in this experience to embody, because in this experience. We are here to have this this opponent experience for the evolution and growth of us. So we have to bring it back into balance. We can't be up in the bypassing of I'm just going to be in the upper, it's all love and light, I don't need to, because where all that uncomfortableness is where the growth happens. And these experiences, like you say, that are brought to us in relationship in the world, they are forcing us to look at it. The problem is that as a protective mechanism, we want the outside to change, because then I can feel better inside.
Whoa, but it's no, because that's where we're at. You know, that's where the left brainers are at. Change the world out there. My friend Francois, the flat earth farmer,
You have to change.
You know, it's, flat earth is the kill shot. All we need to do is make everybody know that the earth is flat, and that's the globe is the biggest lie. And then the world will change overnight. And that's not true. But equally, those guys who sit in the cave and go, all we need to do is and the world is going to change. Equally, that's not true. I think it is the harmonizing of the two. And what I often say to folks is that it's a bit biblical, in the sense that the story of is in the Bible is one of the good shepherd. And for me, the good shepherd, well, it says so in the Bible, is the good shepherd it needs to know his goats and his sheep. He needs to know the sheep, and he needs to know the ego. He needs to know the sort of woolly spiritual element of himself, and he needs to know the egoic warrior you know, element, and not live in either yin or yang, red or blue. You know, they've got that Baphomet that they love in certain circles, and the Baphomet is pointing to the up and the down, and I think in between the up and the down is this middle point, you know, which is where the heart is, and this is where we're meant to be in neutral. It's a green color, which is a neutral color in the electrical system, as opposed to the blue, the sky up here, the red, the magma, the earth down you know, below the ground. So so I say to people, it goes further. There's three axes, you know. You got your left, you got right, like the cross, you got your up and your down, and then there's a third axis, and it's about bringing those three axes into harmony, into center. And that's where I know that I have work to do on some of my own balancing. If I can say one more thing, I often suggest to people nowadays that it's a little bit like Jesus had the 12 disciples, and I think that if you are the hub of the wheel, you are the Jesus in this context, then the 12 disciples become the 12 disciplines of the self, of you and in your life experience here. And so we're meant to bring those things into balance so that our wheel runs smoothly. And I think perhaps some of that imbalance comes, as you say, from previous lives, previous incarnations, previous karmic things. And I say to people, it doesn't really matter necessarily if you don't iron out all the creases in this incarnation, but it would be great if you did. I think, you know, we're obviously able to come back and try again, as it were. So it's not like a do or die thing, but it is nice to kind of bring everything into harmony. Yeah, that's my 5 cents worth on that.
Yeah. What came up when you were saying everyone's lying to me, really, I would reduce that one more down if I were you, and it is betrayal. The issue is betrayal. And that is something that we have experienced in lots of different forms. And the latest betrayal is by our government. But the other thing is, we were, from my understanding, we were created as a slave race. We were genetically created. And this is another controversial concept. Yeah. But we've been screwed with genetically. And we're made as by
an Anunnaki kind of idea.
Like malevolent ETs, I suppose you would call them.
Okay.
So we have very deep within our DNA slavery, every person, because of how we were created and why we were created, or why we were interfered with. I think initially it wasn't that way on this realm, but at a certain point there was this bad element that came in and really went to town and screwed us over. So what we are dealing with right now is, particularly because of the last 2 years, we are looking at elements of slavery. We are told when we can leave the house that we have to wear this thing over our face, that we can't go in this shopping center unless we have this, we can't travel, we can't do this. And what is that reminiscent of? That's reminiscent of slavery. So we are all being triggered to feel all of these sort of related issues, to heal that slavery in the DNA so that we move into being free, to freedom, to being self-determining, creative beings, which is what we are. Energetically, we have a greater impact upon this realm than we realize, with our thoughts and with our energy and with our emotion.
Okay. But I think that if the malevolent element, if that be how it's kind of played out, and wherever that malevolence comes from, that's another long conversation. But if that be the case, then that same malevolence still has its handle on the rudder right now of the human story. And so what you know, I mean, I've been talking about flat Earth on YouTube for years now, but I didn't get any strikes on my channel until I started talking about free breathing. You know, it was like, I'm going around in South Africa telling people to breathe freely, and I get my YouTube channel taken away for that. That's insanity. And so you know, maybe it's just a ratcheting up of the pressure and the squeezing of the cake, as it were, and to see what icing squeeze comes out, and it's like, okay, you made it out, well done. And you know, maybe that's the way that it goes. But I can't set aside at this point the idea that if there is a malevolence, that we're meant to do something. You know, the expression is evil prospers when good men do nothing. And good is God.
Can I just add into that the whole tightening, and we're going to see this, I don't know if you agree, Joe, we're going to see the tightening or the craziness ramp up. You know,
Yes.
For us, for people to really be like snapped awake, the extreme is going to be shown to us, or in your own life, whatever that is that you're needing to heal and deprogram or become free from is going to get louder and louder.
The polarity, the stretch between the polarity is going to get like, it's like a rubber band, pulled and pulled and pulled. And when it reaches, we'll do this. And what that means is that from a spiritual perspective, we are evolving higher and higher in frequency. The more we heal the heavy energies of anger and blame and victimization, the higher our frequency will get. And where we're going is to wholeness. And what that means is that I really perceive there is no difference between you and me, that you are me and I am you at the core of who we are. Now, how we are going to get to that place is through love, is through compassion for either end of the polaric spectrum, not being wedded to one side being better than the other. It is not condoning the negative stuff, but it is trying to find love and compassion for the people embroiled in it, the people stuck in it. And when you find love and send out that love, and when enough people send out love and find compassion, it sort of has an effect on the rest of the planet, and it will do much more or as much to help heal the planet as activism or speaking out. It's there. This is the balance. It's taking action. It's standing up for yourself. It's standing up for others. But it's also coming from a centered place of love and compassion for every being, because we don't know their lives. We don't know, like we're saying all these things about, you know, Lizzie who just left, but what was her childhood like? I mean, this is the deal. So if we're not walking in their shoes, we don't know what their life has been like. So we have to find this big picture compassion, this big picture peace with what is, to the polarity of the realm that we're in. And that's what's going to heal us to bring here. Because this is what you were saying, Dave, you know, that people are like in the truther community are really angry that we are being controlled and all of this. But what you're doing energetically is adding anger to an already heavy, dense situation. And if you send love and compassion, even in a way intellectually at first, something called entrainment happens. And when you have a higher frequency and in the same area as a heavier lower frequency, more often than not, the lower is drawn up to the higher.
I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. Can I just, before you carry on with that, what I would like to add about the compassion and love thing is why the inner work is so important, because generally the 0 to 7 things happen and they could be so benign. And I agree with you that it's almost those things happened so that we have to get to a place where we're healing that. For us to get back to that heart space, to that compassion, we have to do the inner work. Last night I was on a call with part of my healing, and my mentor was talking about that as children we're essentially quite narcissistic, because what happens is an experience happens to us and it becomes, even if it's a negative, it must be about me. And that's not, I'm not saying narcissistic in the negative, because narcissism is a really ugly term that we like to put onto people, but it's all about me. It's all about those wounds, and then we carry them on into adulthood, and that's where the separation happens, because now it's all about me, and we forget that there's the other people or the collective in the experience, which is where the polarity comes in. That actually that person that's experiencing, if we go back to the child, when that thing happened to me, say with my mother, as a child, I've made it all about me. But actually, I forget that my mother in that experience was experiencing her own wounds. And the same happens in this polarity that we see, that people who are in a certain camp or have a certain way of being in the world have also got their own DNA wound, whatever you want to call it, that they're having to work through. And when we can get back to that point of our healing our own self, then we can start to offer that compassion and love to the person that's on the other side of us, that's perhaps even triggering us. You know, the triggering in the flat earth community of anger is because there's already anger in these people of being betrayed long before, whether it be in lifetimes before, or whether it be just from their 0 to 7 childhood experience, and as an opportunity for these people to deal with that anger, but also then take action in that realm or in that area that they're in.
Yeah, and that's why for me, as I've come along this journey, I think if you go back to 7 years ago, I had a real dog in the fight of Palestine v. Israel, you know, and then as I went into truth seeking, you know, there's so much put on the pews, the pews with a J. I don't know if I can say that word even anymore, but you know, the pews are just regular people, as far as I can tell, all from the same source with the same blood, as the Africans say. But their program that they run has them believe that they're chosen, that they're, you know, the bankers, that they're this, that they're that, and they go off and do that, you know. And in any community, when people say, well, this is how we do it here, and you grow up in the first 7 years, this is how we do it, and that becomes your normal. But what in the truth community we find is that there's a lot of spitting at each other, you know. It's like, oh, those are the rich, those are the 1%, those are this religion, or those are that group. And
that's part of the programming. The programming is to put us into boxes. The ego loves labels and boxes, because if I'm in this box, but really as a collective, we are dealing with a victim consciousness.
Well, I don't think you can really affect change while in victimization about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's freedom. Really, freedom is freedom from being a victim. When you get to choose, because as a victim you don't get to choose. You're being persecuted or whatever the case may be. And so when we're in that, someone's still doing something to us, whether that be that person that's standing right in front of you triggering you, they're doing it to me, instead of actually what's being triggered is an opportunity for me to grow. It doesn't mean that what that person is doing right, and that's where boundaries and all those kind of things start to come into effect. But if I see that the government is doing this to me, then I'm still in victimization.
Yeah.
You know, or I see that the 1% elite, I've got all this money and they're controlling us, then I'm still in victimization. It's when we can start to see it, and we have healed the trigger, the wound, that we can then start to be in a place of freedom, because then we get to choose. Because I've said this before, in my opinion, survival, there are two mechanisms, and it's the oscillating mechanism. It's either I'm going to submit, or I'm going to oscillate all the way to the other side. I'm going to resist. I need to protest and get them to stop doing this. Ask the outside to change, so that then I can feel better. When I get to the middle, which is to choose, is because I have healed whatever there is there to be healed, that I'm no longer in oscillation.
Yeah. Let me give you a little story that I've told about how reality reflects what you're feeling. And thus it applies in many areas of your life, big and small, on this entire realm. I was on the way to the airport once with a friend to drop her off for a flight, and we got caught in traffic, and we thought, the first thought is we're going to be late. And then we went, no, we're not going to feel angry at this. We are not going to, scream or chuck a fit, whatever you want to call it. We just surrendered, and we said, we are going to choose how to feel in this situation. We are not going to be triggered by these supposed external circumstances. So we just let it go. And at that very moment, a transit lane appeared next to our lane, and we hopped in and zoomed in, and she was on time. Now, my understanding is if we'd gotten angry, if we had said, what are we going to do? How much is it going to cost to reschedule the ticket? Blah, blah, blah. That lane would never have appeared. It would not. And that's how reality sort of works. I've seen that over and over again in my life, that if you understand your triggers, if you understand the conditioned response to things in your world, and look at it like the observer at that stuff, because sometimes you can't stop it. Sometimes it's a tough situation. Sometimes it's not easy to cope with. But if you can find the observer, if you can find a part of you that is looking at this trigger like you're looking at a science experiment, oh my God, there it is. There's that conditioned response. That observer state starts the transformation of the energy in the trigger, in the energy of why you are conditioned to do that, so that you shift how the energy in the moment, And then reality begins to reflect that change in you, in your frequency signature.
Yeah, so it's a similar in the modality that I'm working in at the moment, is that when we can see, we call it a story, because really our minds are a great storage box. And all it does is when and it's stored all memory, and of course attached to that memory is an emotion that's perhaps still unresolved in your body and your somatic system. And when you're in a situation that just has the slightest resemblance, the brain automatically will go, oh, that's similar, let me pull out that experience, that's similar, and now my reaction is going to be similar. My reaction to it's going to be similar. When you can start to see that those stories are just coming into your fore, and you can see it as a story, which is, you can use the word history. They've told us a story about how something was created. Countries, for instance, countries were created. There's a whole story about how a country is created, but countries don't actually even exist. No, it's the same with in our mind. We have this memory bank of past that will pull up a similar experience, and then in the present we use that same reaction or that same mechanism that we used previously to think of how we're going to solve it, when actually the solution actually is when you can surrender, see the story, all this going on in the mind, but allow spirit to bring forth the solution, which is the lane. And Dave and I have got countless experiences as well.
Wow.
The only issue I have with us is that we always forget that if we just do that, the solution is going to be brought, because our survival mechanism, I have to figure it out.
Yes.
I have to find the solution up here.
We're slow learners.
But of course, this here is only going to give you past solutions. And those past solutions were always one that are traumatic, or of persecution, or of slavery, or of limitation, or of scarcity. They're not ones of this actually infinite possibility that is, you wouldn't have considered the lane until it was shown.
It was there. Yeah. And I wouldn't think that you're a slow learner, Dave. We are trying to reprogram ourselves after not all of these years of our lives, but generationally. This is a big task. In
2 days' time, I think it's 2 days from now, we hit the 3-year mark since we last had a home. So the whole way through this experience for 3 years, we've been having to face similar lessons. And that's why I'm kind of joking about our slowness of learning, because
I think that's what
we've had to face similar experiences.
We're a great example of where this is compassion and love can come in, is that this is so blind. This is so interweaved into our identity of who we are, and it's so default, it's so automatic that we don't even know that we're doing it. But it's that beginning of starting to see, oh, there's the story again, like you just said, oh, there's the reaction there, oh, there, and I can still have that all going on, because it's still going to happen, it's still going to come up. But because I'm aware of it, because I have consciousness over it, I can allow it to just surrender, feel what I need to feel, but be responsible for that feeling. That's a really difficult one for people, to be responsible, because normally we want to vomit that reaction onto someone else or something else, rather than just go, I'm just feeling an energy right now that actually just needs completion, whether it be from our childhood or from eons ago.
And a great example, but a great example of this is playing out in the flat earth community at the moment, because 5 years ago, flat earthers were pretty much united in sort of what they understood in terms of a possible way that the world might work, and that there was one opponent in the room, and that opponent was this NASA globe. And now we see there are very strong views within flat Earth about the existence or non-existence of ether and particles, you know, because you've got atomic physics in one hand, and then you've got supernatural, beyond our kind of measuring physics on the other hand. And inside of flat Earth, there is at the moment a boiling occurring, and it's like I've seen some of the vitriol that was once aimed at globe heads, as they're called, by some, is now being turned into an inside of flat Earth squabble. And it's interesting because in Christianity you see that, and in Islam you see that, you know.
Well, in every area of life you see that.
Yeah, in Judea, it doesn't matter where you are, there are sects and segments who are at loggerheads with each other. And so what these very smart guys have been doing over the last 5 years is really doing so much more left brain stuff, so much more, you know, taking the science, taking the physics to as far as they can. And then that's to be applauded. But because of that, their focus has been left brain, and maybe not on the, what was the word you used? I loved it just now. We're not lie, but betrayal. They have not dealt with the betrayal within. So now you see them pulling at each other like they're enemies. And when in fact, well, 5 years ago, we were all singing from the same hymn sheet. Now we're in the same church on different sides of the aisle, and there doesn't seem to be reconciling. And that's because I think we're saying that there's this unresolved
I like to see it a different way. I like to see it a different way, rather than where we've not moved on, is that we're going deeper. The unraveling or the healing is going deeper. So when 5 years ago, just seeing the lies or seeing that was a layer, we're being pushed, which is where the squeeze comes in. We're being pushed to look much deeper at where that root, interaction that's going on is happening. And can we, this is where it's uncomfortable, can we look at ourselves and not want to blame the opponent? It doesn't mean you don't take action. It just means, can we actually be responsible for our reaction or our how we show up in that? Can we be responsible? Can we look at ourselves? Can we be the man in the mirror? And it's uncomfortable to look at what is still, because it's normally very painful stuff. It's, you know, betrayal is, for instance, is a really hard wound to heal, to look at, but it's in us. And yeah.
And from my perspective, we've also been the betrayer.
Yes.
We've had experiences on all levels, on all aspects of the spectrum. So if you can find forgiveness for someone that's betrayed you, on a deeper level, you're forgiving yourself for having been the betrayer at some other time. It's always a sort of a two-way street.
Yes.
But from an evolutionary perspective, and that's been my focus, has been about understanding myself and evolving. And for me, as somebody on that self-awareness path, you have to be as interested in your reaction to what's happening as to what is actually happening. There's always two things, two prongs to this situation. How am I being triggered, as well as what is actually happening? And in that awareness, you start a shift. So there's another story that I talk about. So we think we're choosing how to be. So for example, you're in a car and you're going towards a roundabout, traffic circle. And there are 4 roads and it's all really busy. And what happens here in Australia, they have often, to make sure enough cars get through the last intersection, they have another road lane that is on the outside that merges in just before the roundabout, before the traffic circle.
Mhm.
Now, the people who are crawling along in their car, they know that there's no point, that they're just going to have to re-merge back in. So they do this. But what will happen is there'll be one person who zooms down that empty lane, pushes in, and gets through the traffic circle before everybody else that's being patient. Now, this causes road rage. This type of thing causes road rage. So let me tell you what's really happening. There is a little kid in that car who's going, that's not fair. I'm being a good girl or a good boy. I was taught to be generous, to not be selfish. Why does that mean selfish person get their needs met before me? Why does that person, and the needs are getting through the traffic circle onto where they're going.
Getting to the airport on time.
So, yes. So when we are emotionally reacting, when we are being triggered, it is often that little kid. We know logically from our adult perspective that it only takes us 5 seconds extra to let that person in. It's not going to stop us. It's just a little interruption. But for the little kid that's inside of you that is knee-jerk reacting to this thing, it is saying, but I've been good. Why can't I get my needs met? It's not fair. So that's how you work out. If you are triggered in traffic, it isn't really about the traffic. It's about the little kid inside of you that you've lost sight of, that's really having a huge impact, because who made that person zoom down that outer lane is the energy you are emitting. So if you were to look at the energy you are emitting in a pie chart, your adult, self-aware, well-read, rational aspect is only about that much of the energy you are emitting. The bulk of the energy we are all emitting is coming from that inner child or your unfinished business. And the reason is it's set up very deliberately as a mechanism of evolution to make sure these things are drawn to you, to trigger you, for you to be triggered in the moment with that traffic, and you go, oh, it's my little kid. It's the little girl or it's the guy. And you may not be able to stop it in the moment. So you observe it, you look at your emotional reactions, and as soon as you can, you pull over, or when you get home, you turn and you feel all that unfairness. You feel all of that rage, or you feel it all. And in the feeling of it, you shift and morph the energy the next step beyond being the observer of it. And you will have less incidences like that occurring in your life, because you've morphed that portion of your signature that's around unfairness, or in whatever case, betrayal. So if you feel people are lying to you, that we've been lied to you, who really is unhappy about that is your inner child.
Yeah.
At a deep emotional level. If you can deal with her emotions or his emotions, you will see that situation with different eyes, and slowly the world will show you more reasons to trust again.
Beautiful.
Yes. So I think that's beautiful, because it's what I would say is that often we need support in someone mirroring or showing us the story that we have created in our mind, but also that when those emotions, whether it be the whole spectrum, whatever comes up, that they're just an energy. It's just an energy that needs completion. It got stuck. And I maintain it got stuck 0 to 7. 0 to 7 is where all this stuff happened, and we're not taught as children. Luckily, there seems to be this beautiful evolution of parenting, which I'm witnessing, where parents are becoming more aware of the child being able to have that full expression and us not judge it. Because that's what happened when we were children, is that there's so much societal, so much familial, so much cultural expectation on us not having those emotional experiences, and they get stuck. We get stuck. And so we're operating from a 0 to 7-year-old, and most of us don't, I'm mature, I'm an adult, I'm in an adult's body, I'm grown. No, actually, we're all 0 to 7-year-olds walking around in adult's body, and the maturation process, or the completion process, or the reclamation process is us starting to be with that 0 to 7-year-old, knowing the stories that we started to tell ourselves, the decisions we made about ourselves and the world, and the emotional reaction.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I am a little bit.
But our parents did betray us. I did.
I did. I wanted to say this about betrayal. I think that because we have a 5-year-old son now, so we're sort of living through this first 7-year window, and we're trying our best to do the best that we can, as most parents do. But what I realize is that even with the best will in the world, there are times that we don't understand what it is he's trying to communicate to us, and perhaps it's more relevant in the first 3 or 4 years when speech hasn't really come on stream. But that, you cuddle and you love and you show all this love onto your baby, and then in a moment they happen to be in the car somewhere, in a foreign house, a strange house, or in a shop, or having a particular thing that they're feeling, and you're having maybe a bad day, or you're not able to communicate with them in the way that they need you to communicate with them. They're trying to say, Mama, this is my problem, Daddy, I need this, and you're not hearing it in the right way, and you're sort of.
Why are you not hearing it in the right way? Because I think in our child parents, again, there's things that are being triggered in me with my own son that are my inner child stuff again.
Yeah. But the sense
when you're in the supermarket and there's a little kid, you watch a parent with a little kid who's having a tantrum. There are actually 2 7-year-olds there. Only one of them is really 7.
Yeah.
The other one is the 7-year-old within the parent. So what I suggest, what I would suggest is, because I don't have children but have done a lot of work with parents and things, is you sit with them and you feel what you feel as they're going through their frustration, and you breathe and you feel, and you just be present. And that shows them energetically, without words, that it's okay to feel, that it's okay to be present with it. So it's hard to explain to a 4-year-old emotional intelligence. How you do it is through being okay with your own, without suppressing and repressing your own. So when you're frustrated and not able to communicate, you sit down and you feel and observe yourself in that frustration, and you are giving them, through observation, the right way to handle emotions.
Absolutely.
That for me, that makes a lot more sense, that inner betrayal from your mother, your first love affair, that inner betrayal is far more potent than the lie about Santa Claus. So because lies are one thing, but that I think betrayal does go deeper, and it's so subtle that most parents would never realize that their child felt betrayed in that moment or on those occasions.
Well, if you imagine the problem is, we think as parents we have to have it all together, and we have to we tell our children, I'm okay. When we say I'm okay and we're not okay, our child knows.
Yes.
Our child is so aware of we can call it our nervous system, because that's more it's a very material thing, but then they're acutely aware of our nervous system. And you go, I'm fine, but actually inside you're angry, you're sad, whatever. That's betrayal. They've been lied to about how you're actually feeling. So when you go back to your example of being in the moment with your child and just being there, when you can be authentic with your child,
Yeah.
you can actually be in the nervous system together, then that's when those opportunities to not betray or be authentic can be present.
Well, remember, your children have chosen you. That's what I believe. They choose you for your wounds. They choose you for your unfinished business because it most closely resembles their unfinished business. And you guys have an agreement to work with each other on this.
Well, I've got a beautiful example. I won't go too deep into it because it's rather personal and she's not here to agree to it. But my oldest daughter, obviously, I parented from my wounds. I parented on default, and that was 23 years ago. And because we're going through this time where I like to think that it's time. At the moment, it's time for us to look at our wounds. It's time for us to heal. It's time for us to deprogram. And so as a consequence of me being called to do my healing, my daughter has been called to do the same. And, you know, you can say, oh, it's just random life experiences. No, it's time. And through my energetic healing, or my daughter is going through her own, and this beautiful evolution is happening for both her and I, because I believe the mother wound is something I've been brought here to heal. And I'm experiencing with my 23-year-old daughter, because she is my daughter. She chose me, and in fact the way that she's finally now coming into her healing is in the same way that I would, even though some of her other mind stories are very much still in the system. The way that she's going about her healing is very connected to me.
Well, it's the same thing when you've got somebody like a neighbor that drives you crazy. You don't change the neighbor. It's the same thing with your kids. Deal with your own, and they will pick it up energetically what you were doing, and it will shift and start the change within them.
Yes. Well, that will go for anybody then, right? Anybody that, you know, even if it's go back to flat earth and you're interacting with someone that's really annoying you, and, you know, you're reacted, when you can start to be a different place to stand with that opponent or that person who's standing in front of you, then they will immediately, their reaction or their experience of you will be different, which will then bring a different experience from them.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it this way, we have this energy game going on between everybody. So it'll be one way with a mother, that way with a brother, that way with a boss. And you are an energetic match. So when this person sends energy to you and triggers you, we generally send the energy back, either consciously or subconsciously, and it triggers them. Then they consciously and subconsciously send it to us, and we will trigger it, be triggered, and send it back. So we're doing this in the hopes of one of us or both of us wake up and go, what the heck are we doing? So the idea is, instead of sending that energy back to that person, you go, here's the trigger, and you turn and you let them go for a bit, and you process the emotion and you take responsibility. And what happens is you come back like this, and then you give them, two things can happen. You then give them permission to rise and meet you at this higher level. Or if they're not ready and they still want to play in a game with, you know, and game is not a derogatory term, it just means an energy exchange, they will turn and find somebody else to have that exchange with. And you will draw somebody new to you that is on this higher level. But Dave, you were just saying about betrayal. the first betrayal, I think, happens that very early on, little kids realize that there is no unconditional love on this planet, on this globe, on this reality, that that we have to alter who we are to get the love we need. And
Yeah.
kids understand this very early on. And it can be as obvious as, if you eat your vegetables, I'll love you. If you're quiet when dad comes home from work, I'll love you. If you look after the younger siblings, I'll love you. If you are mum's emotional support, I'll love you. If you're dad's emotional support, I'll love you. And that's really the earliest betrayal, that who they are, just as they are, doesn't get them the love that they,
Absolutely.
whether they can explain it or not,
Yeah.
that they know them.
Yeah. And and of course, what we will do is we'll do anything to survive. You know, we'll be do anything not to be kicked out of the tribe.
Tribe.
So we'll do whatever we can to get our needs met. And
girls better than boys at that. Hey, we discovered that girls go to school and much more quickly fall into line because they know that that's going to get them the love, the A mark or whatever it is.
I think it's fairly even across.
yeah, I do too. I do too. But it's a mechanism that we have in us that is, I need to survive, because actually if I get kicked out of this tribe, I will die. It's an instinctive survival.
Yeah, because mum and dad are like God. Mum and dad provide everything good. They provide food, warmth, love, shelter, toys. So kids can't explain this. They just know that these beings are the provider of good. So I better do what I think they want me to do, so that I don't get kicked out of the tribe. Because to a little kid, to whether they can explain it, to upset mum and dad, they think they might die.
Yeah. And of course, those mechanisms or those beliefs or those behaviors, we then just take into adulthood and we play them out in adulthood. And I say that we then, the transference onto daddy government and mommy medicine is that we're no longer,
and onto God, really into the divinity.
Yes. We then transfer those same behaviors onto them. But then, of course, there's the opportunity, especially now, for us to see mommy or daddy as they truly were or truly are, and how we are being treated by that still now as adults. Relationships tend to be a really can be intense,
powerful crucible.
And of course, you know, and I'm not including abusive relationships here, but generally, if you're in a relationships aren't this honeymoon Hollywood story that we are shown, that it's this happily ever after and we get married and it's all blissful and it's all joyful. Actually, relationships take two people who are wanting to grow, and like you just said, as one moves, is the other one going to come up and meet them individually and back to that wholeness, because relationships are two wholes that come together in sacred union. And then if you have a child, you form the Trinity, which then becomes the family. And relationships require to be long. Otherwise, you obviously, like you said, you'll turn away and find someone else to meet where your growth needs to happen. But really,
with evolving people, you do this.
Yes.
Or you help other up.
Yes.
You know, it's a joint effort.
Yes. So relationships can be a incredible experience of growth. The same with a child and a parent, of course. So, but yes, you have to be in, and it doesn't mean that someone's bad because they can't. I'm not saying that at all. But there's this opportunity, and I think, you know, we're told as soon as that we get to that point where that other person, I'm up here, that I'm there, then that I need to I need to extract myself because now I'm here, they're there, although that person has the opportunity to grow with you. And you know, that's up to the individual relationship, of course.
So yeah, we're in a graduation system, I suppose you could say that. But the people who run the junior school, they have a vested interest in keeping as many pupils in their junior school. They get a value added thing for that. Whereas obviously when you get, let's say, you find your way into the high school or the tertiary education system, you know, it would not be a sign of growth if you were to look back at the junior school and scoff and mock, because you realize that that's the school that you've come from, and that it's absolutely right that people that are at that junior school level, if you like, or entry school level, that they do the work that they need to do so that they can progress. Because as I say to people, if you want to become the master of your own ship, the captain at the helm, then you need to have gone through and been tested at all the levels of becoming a skipper. You need to have done night sailing, storm sailing, all of those variables without compasses or whatever. You know, you need to have been tested in all these theaters and to have met those challenges before you would really want to say, yes, I've earned my license. I have earned my skipper's license. I am now captain of the ship and I can handle most conditions. The engine goes out during a storm. I know what to do, blah, blah, blah. And so it is you know, I think it's an honorable thing. I think our world talks about us evolving, but the material world that I see around me appears to be devolving. So, you know, is it that the school is getting more cluttered and more crazy in the junior school area? Maybe. You know, from the sort of research area of the world that I come from, there are bad actors. Freemasons come up very often, and the Vatican and all these sorts of things. They come up as bad actors and the sort of enemy in the piece. And sometimes I have asked myself this question, Joe, is that if I knew what these people at the top table knew, would I be willing to go along with it? Because I know that junior school is an essential element of the soul journey here. Would I go along with it? And what's your view on that aspect?
So let's look at this whole realm again from a different level. That we've all chosen to be here for the experience of the polarity, because it is okay. So we came from point zero. We again, this is my model of reality. We came from source, from point zero. We have within us a spark of that source, and there's a spark in you and a spark in every single being in existence. And what are we doing alive? What are we doing in existence? We are experiencing life in all facets. We are making known the unknown. We are exploring every corner of existence. Now, not every soul did it, but a bunch of us decided to explore polarity. A bunch of us decided to come to a place where we forgot that we were divine, and that we forgot that we were, well, forgot the existence or the truth of God, of source. So many people go to church but don't have a real connection, for example, to God. They just go through the motions. So we are here having a very specific experience of forgetting that God, the truth of God and its reality of its existence, and that we are in fact a fractal of God. And so this knowledge, this information is now a part of who we are. And as we begin to ascend, as we begin to increase our frequency and reconnect with source, really reconnect, our knowledge and experience will be sort of put into a library, that beings who didn't make this journey down into polarity can go and pick out a book and read it and feel it and experience it without having to actually go through it. So we are adding to a knowledge base of polarity and duality. So the guys, so there is purposeful good in all parts of the duality, good and bad, right and wrong. We are, we have all been all things. We have been in various lifetimes on this all areas of the spectrum of polarity. When we can come to peace with that, when we can find compassion and love, that's when we're ready to graduate out of here. So why, how, you know, the phrase is, how do you know what joy is if you've never had sadness? There's the contrast, and this is a realm of contrast, huge contrast. And, you know, and I have screamed and railed and shouted at God at that extent of that contrast, and railed over the fact that I created this, I chose this, no bloody way would I. But you have to come, and again, this is a knowingness in me, and it might not suit everybody, this concept, but if we take responsibility for our emotions in this realm, and we look at our heavy, dense emotions and honestly turn and look them in the eye, we will start a transformation process going, and we will start to get higher and higher in frequency. And that, in a way, is how we get out of here. Not that we have to or should, but that's the journey out as far as I'm concerned. So these guys that are tightening the ratchet, what'll happen is they exist at a certain frequency. When we process our stuff enough and find love and compassion for all, no matter what, not necessarily condoning it, as I said, not supporting it, but trying to find a bigger perspective, we start rising here, and we will not be a match anymore.
Yeah.
So people that are a match for this, who are in the thick of this stuff, it's because energetically there's still something to be seen and understood about themselves. It is in that way an illusion. So yes, there is something to be learned in this, but it's a bloody hard lesson. I totally, you know, so what are these guys? That was what your question was, isn't it? That what about these guys that are doing these things?
In a way, so I guess I'm taking from that, I'm wanting to say we should almost be thankful for them creating the conditionality for the experiences that we're having. And that's almost like they're doing God's work.
Well,
I know that kind of sounds, yeah, because without the heart, and as you say, you don't have the joy if you don't have the sorrow. You need all of that, and in a way, it almost exonerates the game. You know, don't hate on the players. I think is what I guess I'm getting from that. And if you still do, well, then that's still part of the test that you're meant to emerge from. And while you were talking, I was thinking, gosh, how this feels like our 2 weeks in France with a lovely man by the name of Howard, but he's so immersed in the story, Joe, that it was like I couldn't really have any kind of conversation with him. My energy felt shrunken. I wasn't productive. I was very still and very quiet because my energy was just at odds with his. And so, and when you use the example of, energies are here and here, I feel like for, even going to the supermarket now, I know I'm walking amongst people who exemplified the lower energy over the last 2 years and went along with all of it. And for me, I recognize that I'm not with people whose energy I can even going down to the beach. And I know we're in a foreign country, but there are plenty of English people at this particular area, and I don't feel drawn like I used to connect with these people. But conversely, when I was in South Africa last year, I felt like not in every case, but when I was talking to the Africans particularly, I was able to find a common vibration, a comfortable vibration. I could put my arms around you kind of vibration, even though for them, some of the stuff I'm saying, they've never heard, but particularly when it comes to how the conspiracy or the control element of this material world is set up. On the spiritual element, they're much closer to source or a God essence than typically us Europeans are, I guess because of their particular journey and experiences and so on. But I won't go too much, but I really resonate with that. And I realize, which is why I feel pressed in a way to try to community build beyond where I've been operating, because I've been staying in the low energy pool to try and get people out of the water, and my feeling is maybe now more like I want to be maybe sitting above in the lifeguard chair, as it were, and just kind of enjoying my day and just seeing, there's someone there I need to pick out of the water, I can go and pluck them out, and because they're calling for help, they're more than like, you know what I mean? Because you may imagine a guy like me had to swim up to a woman and say, hey, do you mind if I put my arms around you and swim you out of the pool? They go, hey, oh, go away, strange man. But if she's got her arm up, help,
yeah,
she'll get whatever help I can offer her, you know what I mean? And if you give it in the right way, you might be able to bring her safely to
well, the concept of lower and higher, implies that the lower has a way to go, or it's important to realize, and I believe this, that everybody is where they are doing what they need to be doing. And so in a way, higher and lower or high, I mean, yes, you get higher in your frequency, but if you're here and you're still going through all of this, it's exactly what you need to be doing. So there is no judgment for anybody of where they are on this spectrum. Yeah. And it's why, again, in a funny way, our job is not to wake anyone up. It's to wake ourselves up. And in waking ourselves up and in looking at our own wounds and looking at why we see the world the way that we do, we then send that knowledge out in the morphogenetic field. That's as important a way to change the world or to influence our reality as it is to go out and protest or to put out videos. It's an internal thing as well as an external thing.
Yeah, that makes me think of the Course in Miracles that I haven't finished reading the book, but I got the gist of it, is that actually our own redemption or our own reclamation or our own light is why we're here.
It's like the only journey we're on.
It's the only journey we're on. Yes, we might end up in that experience offering our knowledge and our, which we are anyway, just by being a different light or a different vibration. It is to
Jesus, Muhammad,
but again, this is where compassion and love comes in, right? Because when you're in that place where you're no longer judging the person, that's like our friend Howard, that he's just where he is because he needs to be there, because I don't know what his lessons are in this experience, that if I can have compassion and love for where he's at and not want to change him or make him see things the way I do, just be with him and if anything, just take the lessons I'm learning from whatever gets triggered in me being in that experience, then that's where the growth happens, or I appear differently to him and he appears differently to me. The bringing together, like you said.
Yes. And what you were saying, Dave, about being in the lifesaver chair, is that what it's called?
Yeah,
and sitting up there and watching everybody. This is the top level that I'm talking about. So in this bottom level, or this level here, everybody's involved in what's going on in the world, and everybody's petitioning here, or
splashing around in the pool. Splashing around in the pool.
Or submitting.
and I'm concerned that this person's wearing that swimsuit, not that swimsuit, that sort of thing. This next level is to be the observer of all of that, and to have all these understandings about it, and understand that as you change your view, this will change. You'll send out knowledge in the morphogenetic field. But the top level is to understand that that the only real thing is you. The only real thing that not that you have to be concerned with, but it's all perfect. And it's this hard thing to say when there's people going through terrible things. But this top level is, we must live and experience all three from time to time, I reckon. And because we're humans, we're here. We've got to live in it. We've got to do it. We don't sit in the cave, as you were saying. You've got to live in the world. But I think it's important for people that live here to try this perspective and to try this from time to time. And everything that you have energy involved in or you're immersed in, just drop it from time to time. Just let it go. Like if you've got a rock in your hands at the beach, and everything that you're worried about, concerned about, wish was different, wish was you could change, if you just put it in that rock and dropped it, and you didn't have any of those concerns, you would be in this top level. When you're at this top level, you are, from my perspective, more directly hooked into point zero, hooked into God, which is all things and no judgment, and everything is equal and of the same energy. So when you sit here, you are disconnected and not immersed in all of this stuff. So the people that are into protesting or doing petitions and things must balance that work with being here and being in a place of no time and no space, no judgment, and just be. This is the doing realm. This is the observing realm, and this is the being realm. And the being realm is where you let go of striving for anything, needing anything, wanting anything, doing anything. And you are 100% receptive in this level, and you allow the energy to flow. You allow creation to flow through you. And what comes to you is not affected by this or this. It comes from source. And when you spend time there, it's a good contrast to here. And there's things to be gained in all of these levels. And one of the things I've been told, which again I screamed and shouted about, is that after this is all done, we're going to miss it. Because it's fascinating, because it's interesting, because it's intriguing.
I love that.
Well, I'm obviously, for the last, certainly for the last 12 months, but it feels like for longer, I've been on my own inner journey, and I'm making progress, which is only something actually in the last couple of days that I've felt come online. And I say progress, that's measure that I can only give myself. But I feel I've stepped into that top area And from that place of emptiness, really, or I don't say free from the mind, but I can have it functioning, but not be attached to it. And when emotions come up, I can see them just as purely an energy that needs to be experienced, rather than I get lost in it or I give it any meaning. And from that place, what has happened is the aliveness I feel is sometimes quite overwhelming, because it's so big, it's so expansive, and then my natural reaction is to want to shut it up and shut it down and become small and limited and whatever again, go back to that sort of being in the, because it just feels so big, but I'm getting more used to that feeling and what that means. And from that place, I can allow life to be, life can breathe me rather than I'm breathing life. And that's possible for everyone. But it does take piercing the bubble, and like where we started this conversation with people who see flat earth and whatever, they've obviously pierced that bubble, but there are layers to that truth journey, that journey. And for me, what, Dave says the last 3 years I haven't learned the lesson, but for me, actually the last 3 years is what it's done is it's brought me a step closer. The outside has moved away from me step by step, or that layer down there is, I've been kind of stepping up a little bit, stepping up a little bit, stepping up a little bit. And that lower, it's all about the story, has less impact on me. And I think that's freeing yourself from the matrix. I think we can do all the physical things, and of course, yes, we should, like you said, that's the doing realm. We should do all those things, but there's this freedom once we detach from the attachments of our wounds, of why we came here, once we've been able to alchemize them and see them energetically rather than be immersed in them.
Yeah. Well, we are going from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. We're going from a masculine dominated world to the feminine coming up more and more and coming into balance. The masculine is about doing. The masculine is about striving and achieving, but the feminine is receptive. So we have to come back into balance between the doing and the being. And this is why the divine masculine and the divine feminine are now coming back into balance. That when you're in this level, you can, you would walk out the door of your house with a simple robe on. And when you are hungry, there would be a tree with berries on it. If it started to rain, there'd be a shelter beside the road. You don't plan, you are in the flow. And when you fully live there and experience that, you have no needs or wants, because you know that when you're in the flow, God will bring it to you. The universe will bring it to you. And it's a very different way of living. And I think that's where we're going.
And actually, if I think that if I'm in a state of resistance against the status quo, then that resistance energy actually can, to a greater, lesser degree, but often to a greater degree, control my creator essence or my flow in the other areas. Because like you were saying, you can be in the pool and then you can be above that. And I think that we do drop in and out of that. But I think that for a lot of people in the pool, getting out of the pool is very difficult, whilst I'm still fighting the tides of the status quo. And I think one of the attractions to even for, you know, someone like Martin, my friend Martin Nico, you know, in the Tartaria kind of thing is that all of a sudden there's this new side pool that's got a lot of attention and a lot of visitors, and it's like, okay, I've got this pool here, and I can kind of, you know, I can be the, you know, the big guy in the pool, but not necessarily migrate to the lifeguard level, because it's much more interesting in the pool, you know, to stay in that pool. You know, you're not frightened by the waves. You can attend to all of those things, or you are angry with the waves and you just want to try and control that pool, and that becomes seductive, and we don't necessarily leave that pool to kind of go on beyond that journey. Not that I would say that that's a bad thing either. It's not a good or bad thing. I've said this for years, that it's a little bit like Dorothy on the yellow brick road, is that there must be, by necessity, there must be challenges for Dorothy as she makes her way along the path. And these challenges are going to be fun fairs. They're going to be excitements and interesting things. And in those fun fairs, there are going to be people whose mission it was to hold that fun fair alive, you know, to keep that fun fair going. And it comes back to what I was saying about Freemasonry and so on, is that, you know, do they know that for better or for worse, there's a requirement for those pools to be kept, you know, to get the pool clean, as it were, to keep the water flowing, even though you've got lots of people that you want to stay visiting. So yeah,
well, with Martin's pool, I mean, for me, what's one of the biggest elements of that pool is love. His little community is it's like a family, and that's why I love it. It's everybody is, like I said, doing where they are, what they need to be doing. And so Martin has his you know, the flat earth and all of this sort of stuff. So he's bringing these people together and helping them grow and evolve through the love within the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, well, I see that migration. I mean, I don't want to talk specifically about Martin, but I see that evolution in the man, because I've known him for a few years now, personally. You know, and I see that in him. I met a lady on a march in Durban last year. Her swimming pool, her little side pool, was child trafficking. I won't use the word in between of that, but you know what it is. SEX. So, you know, she turned up in all military gear, military camo cap and outfit and so on. And her pool was such a volatile and angry pool, that, you know, I think, again, no judgment, but I just think that, you know, if you get caught up in that, then you end up having to, I guess, as part of your soul contract, you end up having to confront, or you end up staying in that. And you alluded to the phrase earlier on that we kind of try and live by, which is to be in the world, but not of the world, you know, and not to be caught up in its maelstroms and in its various things. And I would say to a lady like that, because she spent 15 minutes trying to tell me that if the whole world was to come awake to the child trafficking agenda, then everything would be fine. A little bit like Francois the Flat Earth Farm, that if everyone knows the Earth is flat, then everything will be fine. And of course, that's just a pool from which you still need to, you know, move into the lifeguard kind of seat along your way. And what I think is potentially exciting with various pools is that as the people who've been sort of some of the more well-known swimmers in that pool, the top swimmers in that pool, when they start to say, hey, I'm taking my energy, I'm migrating, and then other people will go through that same energetic, because as you were saying with the sine wave, you know, as you bring your sine wave up, either people are going to match that, or as I found in 9/11 research, when I found, you know, I was quite vocal in 9/11 chat rooms on YouTube, and then when I found Flat Earth and I tried to bring that to people that I thought would immediately jump to it, you know, because they're Christian, because they're flat Earth or whatever. They had to, in my view, they had to shrink away, or I left those pools behind, and I kind of went to the next pool above, which, you know, I think it's not just one pool and then you're the lifeguard kind of thing. There has to be a graduation. There has to be a deep pool and a pool that's got rocks in it, and a pool that's got, you know, strong waves, etc., etc. And we have to move through these different pools, I think, on our way. Yeah.
Well, there's an interesting correlation between that and Dave and our marriage, our relationship, in that Dave came to truth, and it was on this journey and having to confront some of his wounds. And we were like this. And then, of course, in the last 2 years, I've been doing that inner work. So it feels like we've come to a place of this again. And I suppose it goes back to what we were saying about your only role here is to do your work, because someone, let's use Martin because his name was in the, you know, as he's doing his work, and we know he's being challenged by his own personal things, having had conversations with him, is his pool, his sine wave is changing, and then everyone that's in his family is getting to experience that. And like you said, either meet him or they'll fall away. And so that's how that beautiful experience happens, is that as you do the work, that's why we have to. I say have to, because no one has to. You are, like you said, you're where you're meant to be, but how important it is perhaps to do that.
Yeah, but also, you see, because when it comes to the traps of this world, you know, we can become very, we can, you know, whether it be, and this is why people who are in corporate facing roles struggle the most with truth, is that it really unseats their material paradigm and their presence in that material paradigm. And so an example, while you were talking, of someone who decided that they brought information that was too high for their very valuable audience, they actually dialed themselves back down, and that's a fellow Australian by the name of Max Egan. Max Egan of the Crow House, 3 years ago maybe, came out and said, Earth is flat. And then 2 weeks ago, he said, no, it's probably not. It's
the beginning of 2020.
I
know where we were.
And he came out and said that. We've been looking for.
No, we were in the barn. So it was January 2020.
Okay, wow. So, and we were, that was exciting news for me. And I was like, nice one, Max. But so much energy must have been saying, no. You don't want to it's going to cost you too much to go up there. And I think that's why he dialed back from that. But he literally said, yes, the Earth is flat, didn't he? That was what we heard.
I think what we need to acknowledge is that the power of the ego mind, or the mind, is very, very strong. And so that pull to want to go to what's safe is very strong. That is for everyone, you know, and we're so, like you said, it's lifetime. So it's so ingrained or enmeshed or entangled that it is a process. And, you know, maybe a process of expansion, and then I contract again, and then expansion. Each time, hopefully you expand that little bit more as you feel safer. Or like you said, you move between the layers.
Martin Leek is in the chat, by the way.
Hold on.
We love you, Martin.
I have a little confession. I have a crush on Martin.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Cool. Well, he might take you out on his son's boat, you know, if you ever get out to Wales.
I'm on the other side of the world. It's a digital crush.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, he's got such a lot of energy, that guy. You've got to admire him. You know, I've I started watching him probably in 2015 for the first time, but we didn't meet until the end of 2017 or early 2018. You know, so he's a real live wire one, and he's an asset to the truth-seeking journey. And I'm sorry, Martin, I hope you don't mind me referencing you here without you having the opportunity to.
The last interview we had,
comment.
well, I say interview, the last experience we had with Martin not so long ago, I'm witnessing the evolution, and it's a beautiful thing. Brian Staley, I'm witnessing his evolution, you know.
I just blew Martin a kiss.
Yeah, and so yeah, this is where we want to take our brothers and sisters' arms, or hold each other's hands, or lift each other up, because actually we're being, as part of survival, it's like, I need to push you down, because if I don't push you down, then I'm not the winner. I'm not, you know, I haven't got it together. I'm failing. I'm not safe. All those stories we tell ourselves, and we're encouraged to do that, you know, in school trains us to, you know, if you're the good girl, or the one who's going to get the top marks, then you're going to get something from that, instead of, hey, can I help my little friend over here, you know, complete his picture, or just hold his hand, or just sit with him while he completes his picture, because for him it takes a little bit more time. And that goes to those people in the bottom pool. You know, we need to start seeing our brothers and sisters in that bottom pool as being where they are, like Dave said, in the junior school. You know, when you're the older secondary school kid, you don't go to the junior school and start poking them, going, ha, look at you, you're silly, you're stupid, you know, you're not where I am in secondary school, but you've had all this time and experience, and hopefully opportunity to grow, and that little new starter is just, you know, is scared, is seeing things, is experiencing things, and this is where the compassion and love comes in, because actually we can put our hand out for that person that needs walking.
Well, there's an exercise that you can do. You see somebody in your mind's eye that you like, and you say to that person, I am you and you are me, and there is only one. And you then see somebody you don't like, and you say, I am you and you are me, and there is only one. It shifts the energy of this when you do that, when you can put yourself in your brother's shoes, even for a moment, and understand there is no separation. It transforms and begins the healing of these energies when you realize there isn't any difference at a soul level in the core of who we are.
Yes.
That kind of happened to me a few years ago. In fact, I recall we were still living in our home, so it's over 3 years ago now, and I started doing that in the car, you know, when I was driving and looking at someone else in a car and thinking, you're not separate from me. Yes, you are in this human experience. You're having your own experience, and you've got your own path to walk and whatever. But if I can start to see that I'm deeply connected, we can do that in nature too, that I'm deeply connected to you, and that when there is no separation, then I start to have more compassion for the way that person was behaving, and because I understand that wounding that happens and how it separates it. That's when the split happens. You know, when we are wounded, that split happens.
Yeah. And when you can find compassion for someone else, you can find it for yourself, and vice versa. It's the reason that this person is in front of us that we have potentially a judgment about it's the whole mirroring concept. It's giving us an opportunity to see who we think we are. How do we judge ourselves? How do we view ourselves? And sometimes it's hard to see that. It's hard to look in the mirror into a real mirror and see how we feel about ourselves. So how reality works, it will bring us somebody that we might judge, or we might feel that is lesser than us, or is odd, or whatever. And it's really in us. So we wouldn't be seeing it. They wouldn't be in our lives if it wasn't somehow first in us. And so therefore, it's an opportunity for healing when you find compassion and love for somebody that you think doesn't fit in, or has taken the wrong path, or isn't good enough, isn't smart enough, isn't spiritual enough. If you can find compassion for them, you can find it for yourself.
Yeah, and also I think if we start with starting to be, when you're triggered, starting to be curious about what that is that's happening, you're experiencing in yourself, but also curious of what the person who's come into your life that's triggering you is going through themselves, which is why that's happening. When you start to be curious, that's when you can start to see things and be less attached to it, being immersed in it, like it's happening, it's all so terrible. But when we can be curious, what's happening here? What is happening with me? What am I feeling? What are these energies? How do they feel? How do they look? What's the texture of them? What are the thought patterns going on in my head? That's where you can start to go back to that sort of heart, curiosity, compassion, love, and detach and untangle from the stories or the emotions that we still have to complete. And then for me, that it was relevant in terms of my experience with my parents, that I can start now to be curious. Whereas as a child, you don't have that capacity. And now as an adult, having gone through this experience, what were my parents experiencing when that was happening for me and I made those decisions about myself in the world? Because they are also having their own human experience.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so good to have this more feminine, for me anyway, it feels like a feminine kind of perspective on it. But coming back to the masculine, particularly as Martin's perhaps all in the room, if it's true that 5, 6, 7 generations ago, our kind was put through some extreme things, and persecution. Well, there's the persecution that we understand through the Crusades, which, if the stories are true, were horrendous for our forefathers to live through, and that the cuckolding that came as a consequence of that, and the obedience and falling into line and going along with things because of the terrible things that were happening in the name of that religion, as I see it. But also, if we look at the orphan train story, mud flood story, possible invention of society from the beginning through orphanages and awful, brutal childhood experiences that our great-great-grandparents may have gone through, then we're still carrying that vibration of trauma and of
well, it's the dense energy that wants to be brought,
of betrayal.
Yeah, but it wants to be brought into the light. It wants to be seen. It wants to be completed. We're in a period of coming back to the whole. And so that's why at this time these things are coming up. I mean, from an astrological cosmic point of view, it's this whole dance of these energies kind of pushing and pulling at all of that so that these things can come up, which is why I think we're going through all these very extreme experiences in the collective of what we went through the last 2 years, and obviously what we can see unfolding at the moment. All these situations are popping up around that persecution and slavery and limitation, and we're in a very, very exciting time, although it seems it seems really, really hard, but actually the time is now for all that to come to the fore so that we can heal it.
And when I said sins of the father, I should just clarify for anyone listening who hasn't heard me speak on the street. And when I say sins, I mean sine wave. And it is, the sine wave that we're born on is our DNA code. And that's, in my view, and that's a vibratory expression of the pools that we've come from, which is obviously our lineage and our societal construct. These make up the pools that we know at the beginning of our experience here.
Well, and that again reminds me of that we are having human experience, and we will have those ups and downs. It really, like with your car, in the car, and the lane came open, when I'm in one of the downs, how can I be in that sort of fight or flight about it, or can I be in the not knowing and just surrender? And actually then the solution to what that could be is found, so that instead of having these really extreme and long periods of down, that when we are in surrender of it, we're not in resistance of it. And that's not easy, because our wounding means that we want to fight. We want to be in flight. We are in freeze. We are in survival. We want to use the mechanisms to make sure we're safe and have certainty and all that kind of stuff. Is, we want that. Actually, there's something alive and beautiful and possible in that not knowing space, in that surrender space.
Well, what's just popped up to tell you or to talk about is further about the inner child, and why it's so important that we heal these wounds. When I found out what was happening to the children and this whole, the adrena stuff, I understood that it was the macrocosm of the microcosm, that we have neglected our inner child for generations. We haven't understood and nurtured that inner child. And in a way, that's part of the control mechanism. That's why the guys that are in control of us understand how vulnerable we are in those early years. So they've used that. They've used that by keeping parents in struggle, in poverty, in whatever, so that it's inevitable that they overlay their wounds on the kid. So I've always thought that if ever it came out wholesale around the planet, and it's actually happening bit by bit now, is when you find out what's happening to the children, it triggers your own inner child wounds. And that if it ever did come out wholesale, healers will be so needed, because people will be triggered to feel their own, what they imagine and see has been happening to the kids will trigger their own inner child wound. So it again is a mirror. It is an energetic reflection of the neglect within each one of us for our inner child mental wellness. It's an emotional wellness. So there's in another level, purposeful good in what's happening with the children. It's this mirroring, the microcosm of the macrocosm. And so how do we help the kids that have been going through this? By healing our own inner child.
I love that.
Responsibility.
Yeah.
Can I just offer people like a similar analogy, and that would be how many people are up in arms about what we're doing to the planet, as you like to call it, and they call it, of course, because people who think we live on this finite planet, which is at high risk of burning itself out or running out of oxygen or something, so there's always something it's going to run out of. They want for all the focus to be on we're dropping plastics in the water, we're GMOing everything and so on, and yet what's going on inside of our own microcosm is that our diets are, what we're putting into our own universe, into our own planet, which is here, whether it be through the eyes, the mouth, the ears, or whatever, is a lot of pollutants. And so we should be attending to those pollutions first before we worry about the green piecing of the stuff out there. It's like that stuff will take care of itself once you've done, once we're clean on the inside, then the outside will be the reflection of the inside.
Yeah, and I think, but what you were saying, Joe, I resonate with in that, they know that in those early years that if they can keep that overlay of trauma and us not looking or perpetuating itself, then that's a way of the system staying like it is. But that it's important that we go and look at the things that we don't like about on the outside. How is that showing up inside? Like, the word unsafe or safety, I think is such an important aspect of the inner child, which is why, we will grab things on the outside, and why we want certainty, and why we want insurance, and because we need money, why we need pots of money, because it's going to guarantee that we're safe. Because actually there's this inner child wound, I believe, in all of us, that is, I'm not safe. When really, as divine beings, we're all safe. We're all loved. But the wounding, we're not. So we'll try and fix it on the outside instead of going to that, because that feeling of unsafety, that fear, that terror, that trauma, to actually experience in your body. And I can say that firsthand. I have had to confront terror in my body that makes me want it to stop. So I want to grab things on the outside to make this feeling stop, because it feels so incredibly uncomfortable. So I have compassion for people who don't want to look at that, because it does mean confronting feelings, emotions that for eons or for generations, we have been trying to do whatever we can to get away from that, to not have to face it. But the time is now. And if we can just remember that feeling of terror in your body is just an energy, but that takes practice, that takes being conscious of that feeling. That's why I say, when you can start to describe it, what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? Does it have a color? Does it have a texture? When you start to see it just as an energy, even though it feels so uncomfortable, terror makes you want to be safe. And so you're going to, but really, it's moving that energy, moving through the energy, taking it to completion, healing that terror and I have felt that, like, I'm not just healing the terror for me. It feels like it's something attached to something much bigger that I'm having to experience my version of it.
Well, we know time is not linear. So all of the lifetimes where we've been experiencing terror are sort of linked energetically. So this is why sometimes, because we've chosen this moment in time to be here, we are getting through all of this stuff that isn't just here. It's in all these other wins when we were experiencing terror, because we're cleaning up everything in this journey.
I like that. I was going to reference preppers, and you've obviously had a lot of experience in that. But when we sort of co-hosted a South African Flat Earth Festival in February, March this year, and we came across some preppers who reminded us that, whilst it's great to do the prepping and to learn the permaculture and so on.
Be prepared.
Yeah. What often is the trap is that they put all of their focus on doing the external prepping stuff. So they've got all the tins and all the ways of doing everything that they might need, but they haven't it's been it's sort of their way of managing the fear rather than going within and managing it, leaning into the fear within. And because we've been on this journey to get ourselves onto land and growing, and we've had moments of success and progress in that area, but we've also been forced to reckon on, well, what if we don't have any of that stuff? Because once upon a time we had 10-kilo bags of rice and bits and pieces around stashed in the house, and then as we went on the road in our car, I had a certain amount of prepped stuff and bags of this and bags of that. But over the course of the 3 years living in a car or living from a car, we've had to strip most of that away, and so all we're left with at the end of the day is what we're standing in, our meat suit, and how well prepared is that, because if the moment were to come, it's like, oh, well, the music has stopped, so you've got to have this something inside of you to kind of take you on. Just having a cellar full of tins was not really ever going to be the solution. Those tins will last you a certain amount of time, but now you've still got to work with your neighbor. You've still got to find a community. You've still got to, truthfully do that inner work. And so that's where we're trying to take ourselves.
Well, I lived for all of those years on a precipice, waiting for all of this stuff to happen. The stock market crash, the plagues, all of this stuff.
Plasma apocalypse.
The apocalypse, yeah. And let me tell you, you get very weary living there.
Yeah.
But what it did was bring my imminent death here. So the purposeful good in living in that community as an aware person was you looked at your emotions, because how safe do I feel? Like all of this stuff. And ultimately, like, I'm not a prepper now. I don't have anything. I have a little bit of silver. That's it. But
prepping.
I don't have all of the things that I used to have. And I sort of feel, well, you know what? So what if I die? I don't care. It's the blink in the eye of God. It's a blink in the eye of reality. And I would say, because I dealt a lot with my fear of dying, I've experienced the last 2 years very differently to many, many other people. And in fact, my life improved in the last 2 years. And it's because I never once really was afraid of it. Fear wasn't the issue for me. I had other stuff going on. I've been certainly rolling around in it, like other people have been rolling around in their stuff, but it wasn't around death. It wasn't around the things that most of the people were worrying about. And I was living in this beautiful little community that was all aware. They would meet surreptitiously every Sunday, even when we weren't supposed to.
Good for you.
It was
good for you.
Yeah. So
Aussie was pretty hard. You guys, we watched how hard draconian they went in Australia. Nanny State.
Well, it was mostly in Melbourne.
It
was mostly in Melbourne. It was better and worse. Like, people said Australia was just terrible, wholesale terrible, but it was degrees in various places of terribleness. But everybody focused on Melbourne as being the overall. So step back from the precipice, let it go. From this band of existence, all that you need flows to you. And it's about being and allowing the flow of God, the flow of energy,
but also
rather than efforting, being.
Yeah, but being okay with that, being okay in the not knowing, or being okay in the mystery, or being okay standing on the edge, because that's where you're most alive. When we're using all those mechanisms, like you said, it takes so much energy to
to keep everything safe, or not to feel those things, or not to feel the uncertainty. We want to, you know, we're using our life energy on protecting ourselves from the possibility of what might happen. Of course, we know that the media will tell you about countless things that could go wrong, that could happen if you're not prepared, or if you've not, you know, done this, and the next thing. But really, the healing of the inner child takes you to the point where you can be in that place of not knowing,
comfortable in the mystery,
not knowing, and being okay with that.
It's like we're flowing down a river, and there's a bends and turns ahead, and we also know that there may well be a waterfall on this river that we're coming to. And it's like, you know, instead of fearing the potential waterfall, it's like, yeah, I know, if there's a waterfall, we go down the waterfall. You know, that's the way the river must flow, back to source, back to the sea.
And most people are grabbing into the side of the bank, not willing to let go, and just like crawling their way down. But
rather than this should be a fun ride, you know, don't listen to the media.
Can I use a beautiful analogy that my mentor used? Because part of my journey is you have this identity. Your identity or personality is one that's developed in the 0 to 7 year, where you start to see yourself in the world in a certain way, depend on what you brought into this life, but also what you experience in this life. And it becomes your boat that you're in. They use the analogy of a boat, and you're in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. That
boat now has got holes in it. And you know it has holes in it, but you want to stay in the boat that's keeping you safe, what you believe is keeping you safe. You want to hold on tight. Same with the bank.
Shuffle the decks of the
on the
Titanic.
Side of the river. You want to hold on tight to it, because the idea of jumping into the ocean, or letting go from the banks of the river, and going with the flow, or jumping into the ocean, not knowing where you're going to swim to, is so scary that you'd rather hold on to the boat that's sinking, or rather stay on the side of the banks, knowing that you're using all that energy just to hold on. And actually, if you let go, the possibilities that are in that river, or if I dived into the ocean, let the identity or the boat go, are infinite.
I agree, totally agree. Yeah. Beautiful analogy.
Can I suggest that from a time point of view, we should think about wrapping this conversation up? I would love to, if you're available, to have more conversations with you in future, Jo.
There's lots more to talk about, definitely.
There is a lot more to talk about, but my brain's fitness to stay in a conversation is not as good as it used to be. Once upon a time, I did a 9 hour, was it 9 hours or 8 hours, with a guy called Russian Vids, through the night in the freezing cold on the bus in Portugal, where
with no
electricity, in the dark, actually. So, and my fire had gone out that I had as well in the 9 hours. So it was through the night till 4 or 5 in the morning. I think I burnt my brain that time. So 2 hours is about as much as I can handle at the moment. But I really, really am. I'm a student on some of this stuff. You know, for me, a lot of where I've got to has been intuitive. You know, I haven't been like a deep diver into one particular area, which is why, you know, I love talking to Martin and catching up with where he's at. But I'm not a deep diver in some of these areas. I tend to intuit stuff more, and I'm resonating. I resonate very much with what you're saying, and I would like for us to have more conversations. It may not be as attractive to some of my audience as me doing some street activism. You know, I'm okay with that, because, as I say, you know, like the last thing I want to do for myself is say, well, I've got this tiny, minuscule little pond here, and I'm going to remain in that pond because it feels comfortable to have some people swimming around, my name. I need to elevate myself, and in so doing, raise those people around me as much as I can. So
Well, we didn't even get to my light language.
No, well, we'll definitely get to light language, and for people who haven't heard of that, it's not that I'm very conversant in, but I'm fascinated by it. Joe does talk in or channels, I suppose you would say, light energy from beings.
Yeah, light language is a sort of soul tech, spirit tech. It's a technology to help us move through what's happening on this plane at the moment.
Because that's another topic that we could cover, hopefully.
I know, it's a big one.
Yeah, another one, because actually who are we actually? What are we when we are in our authentic selves, and what technology is available to us that we've forgotten, that we're learning or we're tapping back into. And that's it's very interesting. It's for some of us, it's the program that we've been given around that stuff makes it sound woo-woo, makes it sound like, it's not possible, because we can't even imagine the level of power that we have as these beings. So it'd be really interesting to have a conversation around light language and the other technologies that are available to us. Because when we talk about the age of Aquarius, that is, technology comes into that. And of course, we can see that as computers or whatever, but it's really that we have our own technology available to us.
Yes. Because who is actually speaking through me is another version of me.
Yes.
In another when.
Yes.
Well, this is a very interesting area of discussion. Perhaps we could, agree to meet in like a week, 7 days kind of thing, and have another couple of hours and chip away at some of the stuff.
Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be good.
Yeah, I think so. And I'd like to invite people to just take this conversation we've had, and maybe anything that's going to come from it as a point of curiosity, and look and see what that means for you personally.
Up to Joe.
I would say that if anything we've said tonight has triggered anybody, or tonight for me, again, what is it bringing up in you? We're only triggering you because you need to be triggered. You need to see something. So if you ask that question, then you've gotten a lot out of this. Even if you think this is all bunkum, or rubbish, but you think, well, what is it triggering? Then you've gotten all that you needed to out of this.
Yeah, I say that triggers are actually a gift. We don't like to see them that way, because they can often be painful, or they bring up stuff that is uncomfortable, but they're actually a gift. They're where the growth actually is. And like you said, if anything come a while, you're being triggered, being curious around that. The same goes for in your day-to-day life. If someone's triggering you, can you stop for a moment, even if it's not when you're in it, but afterwards, and go, what was that about? What does that mean for me? There is this opportunity to listen to life. What is life trying to teach me?
And thank you for the lesson.
Yeah.
I should just say a few thank yous for coming and listening in, guys. Hippie Shake and Andrea, not this one.
And Zal, hello, Zal.
Zal? Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Martin of the Leadker family, Just JP, and Natalie and Nathan, National Memorial Gardens. There's two Nathans.
Terry, Just JP.
Tapper, 777, who I last saw in Wales a few months ago.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't always put the names in there because I've met people in person. Sometimes the names and the
He's a foot soldier for Flat Earth.
Yeah. And National Memorial Gardens, hello, thank you.
Yeah.
Harry Willie.
Natalie.
Natalie, yeah.
Yeah.
Andrea.
Seven Ravenwolf was there.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been an amazing conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, we hope to chat to more. I mean, another conversation with me would be the masculine and feminine and how we can come together, both in a masculine and feminine, but in the external, because that's very, very much something that we're seeing come up in the collective or in the macro, the masculine and the feminine element. And how does that trigger me? What does that mean to me? How can we redefine what masculine and feminine actually is? So that would be another area that would be good to have a conversation about.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to say in closing, Jo?
Just how much I love you guys and love everybody in the chat. And I wish you all the best and joy and love and happiness that can ever be possible.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and when we can remember that we're all one, but walking our path individually, then we can start to soften that separation that we experience with each other, and that's where the change happens.
I'm just answering Zal.
Okay, a quick shout out to my Zulu friend, Udu, who's, I don't think he's in the chat now, but I mentioned him earlier on. And, in South Africa, data costs a lot. So for those guys, I would much prefer to offer them information as a podcast without the need for streaming video and so on. But I do appreciate him taking the time and expense to have watched some or all of this thing. I mean, he's a guy who would love to see us back in South Africa and, contributing to helping people develop. And I think that's possibly where our story will take us, at least part of the time going forward, because we feel that there's great work that can be done there as we continue to develop ourselves and move beyond the story that we were all impressed with. I don't want to say indoctrinated, impressed with this at a young age. So on that note, did you want to say anything else?
No, just, thank you so much. It felt like such a great conversation. And I feel like we've only just begun. So let's meet again soon.
Yeah.
We'll probably do this in a week. We'll set it up and hopefully less of the technical issues at the start. We don't have a support team here yet with all the technical skills to help.
I'm hopeless technically. That's why I asked you to host.
Well, we've only just gotten a laptop. We've been 2 years without a laptop, working from one mobile phone, so we're not quite conversing with a laptop as though we been doing sort of streaming with it all the time. It's been
and we also have that resistance to technology, don't we?
Well, at this age
we want it, but we don't. So just thank you so much, and go well, everybody.
And spread good words and much love to those in your orbit.
I kind of love the astrology angle. We're in an incredible time. We have got 6 or 7, I'm not quite sure, I call them luminaries, energies that are in retrograde at the moment.
Retrograde.
A couple of days ago, we had Jupiter, I think, aligned with the sun, and that was the first time in 70 years that it's been in that alignment. It's an incredible time to go back to the masculine and feminine. from what I understand, there's at the moment we're in a there's the sort of masculine rising time. Feminine's been doing a lot of that work, not to say it's ending, but there's this masculine energy that's
It's time for the guys to step up.
Exactly. And actually,
do the inner work.
yeah. And actually, if you look at the astrology, there's a point 2 years from now where there's a very, very strong masculine energy that will be pushing men to take a stand. So we have a 2-year window for men to really come into that masculine, obviously balancing the masculine and feminine. So yes, there's energy, and I'm sure people are feeling it. I certainly am. We certainly are as a family, and you can't ignore it. It's not, but it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So be kind to yourself, be compassionate to yourself, and to others, as we're all walking through this pretty incredible time.
Incredible time. You should be grateful to be a part, but I am grateful.
And that we chose to, like you said, Joe, that we've chosen to be here. We've chosen to be, even though it may not feel like it.
I know. It's a hard one to swallow, but it resonates with me. I know that it is true.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
Okay.
Lots of love.
Lots of love. And be well. We'll close the stream and we'll see you guys.